Imagine this. You're packing up your life, ready to move somewhere new in America. Maybe you want better weather, cheaper rent, or just fewer people who know your embarrassing middle school nickname. But here's the problem. Not every city in the US is a dream destination. In fact, some places are so rough, so frustrating, or just plain weird that moving there feels like signing up for a real-life survival show. Except with fewer camera crews and way more potholes. Now, before anyone gets offended, relax. This list isn't about bashing people. Every city has good folks, hidden gems, and at least one decent taco truck. But let's be real. Some places have reputations that even Google Maps can't spin into a positive. High crime, collapsing economies, weird laws, weather that feels like punishment. You name it, America has a spot that specializes in it. And that's what we're counting down today, the 10 worst places to live in America. Not just the boring, highest crime rate list you've seen 1,000 times. Nope, we're going to mix real stats with cultural quirks, funny stories, and a little playful roasting. Because honestly, if you can't laugh about it, you'll probably cry. For example, did you know there's a city in America where residents literally have to warn visitors not to drink the tap water? Another where winters are so brutal, locals measure snow not in inches, but in how many cars get buried. And of course, we can't forget the towns where the job market is so bad. People list hope as their side hustle. But here's the twist. These places aren't just random. Each one teaches us something about America itself. About how economies rise and fall, how history leaves scars, and how sometimes bad city planning can ruin your weekend faster than a trip to the DMV. So if you've ever thought, hey, maybe I should move to save money, watch this list carefully because, yeah, rent might be cheap in some of these cities. But there's usually a reason for that, and it's rarely a good one. By the end of this video, you'll know which places to cross off your Zillow search forever. You'll also probably feel a little grateful for wherever you live right now, unless you're already watching from one of these spots. In that case, hey, thanks for your bravery. So buckle up. This isn't going to be a fancy travel guide. Think of it as the anti-tourism brochure. Welcome to our countdown of the 10 worst places to live in America. Spoiler, number 10 starts with a city that sounds nice on paper. But the reality, not so much. Number 10, Camden, New Jersey. All right, let's kick this off with a city that's been on worst places lists so many times. Camden residents probably just sigh and say, yeah, we know. Welcome to Camden, New Jersey. Or as locals sometimes joke, the city where even your GPS says, are you sure? Camden sits right across the river from Philadelphia, which sounds cool. Until you realize Philly basically treats it like that awkward cousin nobody talks about at Thanksgiving. While Philly has cheesesteaks and rocky steps, Camden is more famous for sky-high crime rates and abandoned factories that look like zombie movie sets. Here's the thing, Camden actually has an incredible history. Back in the day, it was a manufacturing powerhouse. RCA Victor was here, Campbell's Soup was here, you know, the red can that made your childhood grilled cheese taste official. But then the factories left, jobs vanished, and the city just crumbled. Today, poverty rates hover around 35%, which is nearly triple the national average. Unemployment? Don't even ask. Let's just say if struggling economy were an Olympic sport, Camden would have a permanent gold medal. Now let's talk crime. For years, Camden had the title of most dangerous city in America. Not exactly the slogan you want on your welcome sign. The murder rate was once more than 18 times the national average. Imagine walking your dog at night and thinking, is this exercise or a side quest in Grand Theft Auto? And don't even get me started on the schools. Graduation rates have historically been low, funding is a nightmare, and families who can afford to leave often do. Which leaves behind communities trying their best, but fighting uphill battles every single day. But, and here's the part where we're fair, Camden isn't all doom and gloom. The city's been working hard on redevelopment. The waterfront area actually looks nice now with an aquarium, a minor league baseball stadium, and some shiny new office buildings. But locals will tell you, step a few blocks away from the tourist spots, and reality hits fast. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. So why does Camden land at number 10? Because it's this weird mix of potential and struggle. It's got history, it's got location, it's got people who genuinely care. But decades of poverty and crime have weighed it down so hard that living here often feels like trying to swim with bricks tied to your feet. And trust me, if you think Camden sounds rough, wait until you hear about our next city. Let's just say it's famous for brutal winters, crumbling infrastructure, and an economy so shaky, people joke about the city paying them to stay. Number 9, Detroit, Michigan. Ah, yes, Detroit. The Motor City, the birthplace of Motown, the heart of the American auto industry, and one of the most famous examples of a city that went from boom to bust so hard, it should honestly have its own Netflix drama series. Let's start with the obvious. Detroit used to be the place to be. In the early and mid 20th century, Ford, GM, and Chrysler turned it into the engine of America. Jobs were everywhere, money was flowing, and the city was alive with culture, jazz, and cars rolling off assembly lines. But then the factories closed, companies moved, and the jobs disappeared faster than my paycheck on Amazon Prime Day. What's left? Well, for a while, Detroit became the unofficial capital of abandoned buildings. Whole neighborhoods looked like ghost towns. You could literally buy houses for $1. And before you think that's a deal, remember, some of those houses didn't even have plumbing, electricity, or, roofs. Imagine Zillow listing 2-bedroom, 0 roof, comes with free raccoon tenants. And then there's the crime. Detroit consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in America. Violent crime is high, property crime is high, and police response times have historically been, let's call them casual. Like, your house got broken into? We'll be there in 2 hours, maybe. The economy hasn't helped either. Detroit filed for bankruptcy in 2013, the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. Think about that. Entire countries have defaulted with less drama. Since then, the city's been clawing its way back, but unemployment and poverty are still way above national averages. Now, to be fair, Detroit isn't just despair. Downtown has seen some revival. Sports teams like the Lions, Pistons, and Red Wings keep spirits alive. Well, try to. Lions fans know pain on a spiritual level. There's also an incredible art scene, great food, and people who refuse to give up on their city. Detroiters are tough. They'll tell you flat out, yeah, it's rough, but it's home. Still, living here comes with trade-offs. Cheap housing? Yes. But that's usually because demand is low and safety is a concern. Cultural pride? Absolutely. But you'll also need thick skin and maybe 3 spare locks for your front door. So why is Detroit at number 9? Because it represents the ultimate American dream gone wrong story. Once a thriving metropolis, now a city still struggling to reinvent itself after decades of decline. It's both inspiring and heartbreaking, depending on which block you're standing on. And if you thought Detroit's abandoned houses sounded depressing, wait until you hear about the next city. Picture endless snowstorms, potholes the size of swimming pools, and taxes so high, you'll wonder if the government thinks you're a billionaire. 8. Buffalo, New York. Welcome to Buffalo, New York. Home of chicken wings, endless snow, and sports teams that exist solely to break their fans' hearts. If Detroit is the poster child for economic decline, Buffalo is the mascot for why does Mother Nature hate us? First, the weather. Buffalo isn't just cold in winter, it's brutal. Thanks to lake effect snow off Lake Erie, the city gets buried every year. We're not talking about a cute little snowman situation. We're talking open your front door and realize you now live in an igloo. In 2014, a storm dumped 7 feet of snow in just 3 days. That's not weather, that's a natural disaster disguised as Christmas. And if you think the summers make up for it, think again. Summers are short, humid, and mosquito-filled. It's basically nature's way of saying, congrats on surviving winter. Here's a swamp. Now let's talk economy. Buffalo used to be thriving, shipping, steel, industry. But when those industries collapsed, so did the city's fortunes. Job opportunities dried up, young people moved away, and Buffalo developed a reputation as a place you leave rather than move to. Today, while things have improved slightly, wages are still lower than the national average, and the cost of living is only cheap because, well, not many people want to live there. Then there's the infrastructure. Potholes? Buffalo has them. In fact, locals joke that the city has 2 seasons, winter and road construction. Drive a car here long enough and you'll need new shocks, new tires, and possibly a new spine. And sports, oh boy, the Buffalo Bills, the Sabres. These teams are legendary, not for winning championships, but for creative new ways to lose them. The Bills went to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row in the 90s and lost every single time. That's not just bad luck, that's trauma. Sports fans here don't watch games, they attend weekly therapy sessions in stadium seats. But again, let's be fair. Buffalo has charm. The food scene is amazing. Yes, the wings really are worth the hype. The people are tough and loyal, and the cost of housing is low compared to most of New York State. But living here means constantly battling weather, economic stagnation, and a lingering sense that your city peaked a century ago. So Buffalo lands at number 8 because it's a survival test disguised as a hometown. It's the kind of place where if you can make it through 5 winters, you officially earn honorary Viking status. And if you think Buffalo's snowstorms are extreme, just wait for the next city on our list. It's not snow that makes life miserable there. It's heat, hurricanes, and mosquitoes the size of your ex's ego. Number 7, New Orleans, Louisiana. Ah, New Orleans. The Big Easy, jazz, Mardi Gras, beignets, and oh yeah, some of the toughest living conditions in the U.S. Now, don't get me wrong, visiting New Orleans is magical. The music, the food, the vibe. It's one of the most unique cities in America. But actually living there, that's a whole different story. Let's start with the obvious. Hurricanes. This city is basically built in Mother Nature's boxing ring. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 devastated New Orleans, and while the city has rebuilt, flooding is still a constant threat. The entire place is literally below sea level. Imagine living in a cereal bowl just waiting for someone to pour the milk. And then there's the heat. Summers in New Orleans aren't just hot, they're swamp hot. Step outside in July and it feels like you're walking into someone else's mouth. Add in mosquitoes the size of helicopters, and you'll quickly learn that bug spray is less of a choice and more of a lifestyle. Now, crime. New Orleans consistently ranks among the top U.S. cities for violent crime. We're talking robberies, shootings, carjackings, you name it. And while tourists mostly stick to Bourbon Street with their oversized plastic cups of daiquiris, locals deal with the everyday reality of neighborhoods plagued by crime and poverty. Speaking of poverty, the economy here is shaky. Tourism is the lifeblood, but tourism jobs often don't pay well. Outside of that, opportunities are limited. The city has struggled with underfunded schools, poor infrastructure, potholes deep enough to eat a small car, and constant debates over how to fix it all. And let's not forget the politics. Corruption scandals in Louisiana are practically a state tradition. If you live in New Orleans, you don't just vote. You also place bets on which officials will end up indicted. But here's the kicker. New Orleans is also deeply beloved by its people. Despite the hardships, the culture is unmatched. Jazz was born here. Mardi Gras is basically an Olympic event for partying. And the food? Gumbo, jambalaya, po' boys. This city might be falling apart in places, but it tastes delicious while doing it. So why does New Orleans land at number 7? Because it's the ultimate contradiction. A city that feels alive, electric, and full of soul, but also constantly fighting crime, poverty, and weather disasters. It's fun to visit, but living there can feel like being in a never-ending episode of Survivor Gulf Coast Edition. And if you think New Orleans sounds chaotic, wait until you see our next city. It doesn't have hurricanes or Mardi Gras, but it does have a reputation for corruption, crumbling infrastructure, and winter so bad, locals start sounding like villains in a Batman movie. Sucker 6, Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, the Windy City, home of deep dish pizza, Michael Jordan, and that one friend who won't stop telling you how their city is the best. And listen, Chicago has its highlights. Amazing food, gorgeous skyline, rich history. But living there? Oh boy. It comes with a long list of headaches that lands it squarely at number 6. First off, let's address the weather. Chicago winters are like a hazing ritual. Temperatures drop so low it feels like the wind is physically slapping you for daring to exist outdoors. Ever heard of the phrase the hawk? That's what locals call the icy wind that comes whipping off Lake Michigan and straight into your soul. Want to walk to work in January? Better layer up like you're preparing for battle in Game of Thrones. Then there's the crime. Chicago has become infamous for its gun violence. While it's not the only city in America with a crime problem, the sheer number of shootings regularly makes national headlines. Some neighborhoods are perfectly safe, but others, let's just say you don't want to take the wrong turn at night. Taxes? Yeah, brace yourself. Chicago is in Illinois, which has some of the highest property taxes in the country. Add in the city's sales tax, gas tax, and literally every other kind of tax, and you start to wonder if the government is charging you just for breathing. It's like, welcome to Chicago. Please deposit your wallet in this bin. And don't get me started on traffic. The highways are jammed, the roads are cratered with potholes, and parking costs more than a month's groceries in some neighborhoods. Oh, and when you finally do find parking, congrats. You still have to shovel your car out of the snow while your neighbor passive-aggressively reserves their spot with a plastic chair. But here's where Chicago really earns its spot on this list: corruption. Illinois politics are legendary for it. 4 of the state's last 10 governors ended up in prison. That's not a government. That's a Netflix true crime series. City politics are just as messy, with decades of backroom deals and scandals that make you wonder if anyone's actually running things or if it's just chaos with paperwork. Now, to be fair, Chicago isn't all bad. The food scene is world class, the arts and culture are phenomenal, and if you can afford to live in the good parts, you'll probably love it. But for most people, the daily grind of high costs, freezing weather, and safety concerns makes it a tough place to call home. So Chicago comes in at number 6. It's a city that's equal parts amazing and exhausting. A place that will wow you one minute and break your spirit the next. And if you think Chicago's cold winds are bad, wait until you hear about number 5. This city doesn't just freeze you out, it drains your wallet, your patience, and maybe even your will to live. Number 5, Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, the city that gave us rock and roll, LeBron James, and more punchlines than it probably deserves. If Chicago is exhausting, Cleveland is the cousin that always seems to be struggling, no matter how many times it tries to get its act together. Let's start with the economy. Cleveland was once an industrial powerhouse full of steel mills and factories. But when those jobs vanished, the city never really recovered. Today, Cleveland consistently ranks among the poorest big cities in America. Roughly 1 in 3 residents lives below the poverty line. Unemployment is high, opportunities are limited, and the brain drain is real. Young people leave for better prospects and rarely look back. Then there's the weather. Oh, the weather. Like Buffalo, Cleveland sits on the Great Lakes, which means lake-effect snow in the winter and humidity in the summer. Winters here aren't just cold, they're bone-crushing. And the gray skies? They never seem to end. Cleveland gets so little sunshine, locals joke about taking vitamin D intravenously. Seasonal depression isn't a risk here, it's practically a civic identity. Crime is another problem. Cleveland has one of the highest violent crime rates in the country. Property crime is rampant, too. Some neighborhoods are fine, but others? Let's just say you won't be leaving your car unlocked. And let's talk about infrastructure. Cleveland has struggled with decaying roads, abandoned buildings, and public schools that are consistently underfunded. The infamous Cuyahoga River even caught fire multiple times in the past because of industrial pollution. Imagine explaining to someone, "Yeah, our river catches fire sometimes." That's not just bad PR, that's Mother Nature filing a restraining order. Now, Clevelanders are tough and loyal, and they love their sports. But the sports history here is brutal. The Cleveland Browns are basically the NFL's permanent comedy act. The city went over 50 years without a major sports championship, until LeBron dragged the Cavaliers to an NBA title in 2016. And then, of course, he left again. Ouch. To be fair, Cleveland does have bright spots. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a legit attraction, the food scene is better than outsiders give it credit for, and the cost of living is relatively low compared to bigger cities. But cheap rent only gets you so far when the jobs aren't there and the winters feel endless. So Cleveland comes in at number 5 because it's a city with spirit, but weighed down by economic decline, harsh weather, and a reputation it just can't shake. It's the kind of place where you might say, yeah, it's affordable, right before you remember why. And if you think Cleveland sounds depressing, wait until you hear about number 4. This city has heat that'll fry your brain, traffic that'll break your soul, and prices that'll make your bank account weep. 4-4, Miami, Florida. Miami. The city of beaches, nightlife, and Instagram influencers who somehow never have day jobs. On the surface, Miami looks like paradise. Turquoise water, Cuban coffee, palm trees swaying in the breeze. But actually living here? That's when the dream turns into a sweaty, overpriced reality. First, the weather. Yes, it's sunny. But it's not the gentle, let's go for a picnic kind of sunny. Miami heat is relentless. Step outside in August and you'll feel like you've just opened the oven door, except you can't shut it off. Add in swamp-level humidity and congratulations. You now live inside a hot yoga studio you didn't sign up for. Oh, and hurricanes? Yeah, those are a yearly tradition. Board up the windows, stockpile water, and hope your roof doesn't end up 3 streets over. Now, let's talk cost of living. Miami is expensive. Rents have skyrocketed in recent years, with the average apartment costing more than most people make in a month. And buying a house? Forget it. Unless you're a crypto millionaire or secretly part of a cartel, you're probably priced out. And traffic. My God, the traffic. Miami drivers are in their own category of chaos. It's like a mix of Formula One racing and Mario Kart, but with less respect for human life. The roads are jammed, parking is impossible, and if you make it through rush hour without screaming, you deserve a medal. Crime is another issue. Miami has cleaned up a lot since its infamous cocaine cowboy days of the 80s, but crime still runs higher than the national average. car theft, burglaries, scams. They're all part of the package deal. Plus, Miami is basically ground zero for bizarre news stories. If you ever read a headline that starts with Florida man, there's a good chance it happens somewhere near here. And don't even get me started on climate change. Miami is literally sinking. Rising sea levels threaten to swamp entire neighborhoods in the not-so-distant future. Locals call it sunny day flooding, when the ocean just casually decides to spill onto your street on a clear afternoon. That's not a quirk. That's the universe warning you to invest in a boat. Now, to be fair, Miami is fun. The nightlife is legendary, the food is incredible, and the cultural mix of Latin American and Caribbean influences makes it one of the most vibrant cities in the U.S. If you're rich, young, and love chaos, Miami might feel like heaven. But for the average person, the heat, the cost, and the constant threat of flooding make it exhausting. So Miami lands at number 4. Gorgeous for a vacation, Instagram-worthy for weekend, but a nightmare for long-term survival unless you're prepared to sweat through your bank account. And if you think Miami is bad, wait until you see number 3. It's a city with crime rates that make national news, corruption that feels like a sitcom, and a reputation so infamous, even the locals roast it daily. Number 3, St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, home of the Gateway Arch, toasted ravioli, and baseball fans who treat the Cardinals like a religion. On paper, it sounds like a nice Midwestern city. In reality, St. Louis often feels like America's cautionary tale about what happens when crime, bad infrastructure, and economic decline team up like a supervillain squad. Let's start with the big one. Crime. St. Louis consistently ranks among the most dangerous cities in the U.S. Violent crime rates here are astronomical, way higher than the national average. We're talking shootings, robberies, assaults. In some neighborhoods, you wouldn't dream of walking around after dark. Honestly, even daylight can feel sketchy depending on the block. It's so bad that crime stats for St. Louis are practically meme-worthy at this point. And the city's layout doesn't help. St. Louis is deeply divided, literally and figuratively. Racial segregation, economic inequality, and decades of poor planning mean that some neighborhoods thrive, while others look like they've been abandoned for years. Drive 10 minutes and you'll go from upscale cafes to boarded-up houses faster than your GPS can recalculate. Then there's the economy. Like many Rust Belt cities, St. Louis has struggled with job loss and population decline. Manufacturing used to be the backbone here, but as factories closed, opportunities dried up. The city has lost over half its population since its peak in the 1950s. Today, unemployment and poverty rates remain stubbornly high. And let's not forget infrastructure. St. Louis roads are filled with potholes, public transportation is underwhelming at best, and the school system has been underperforming for decades. Families who can afford to move to the suburbs usually do, leaving the city with even fewer resources to fix its problems. Now, culturally, St. Louis isn't without charm. The food scene has gems. Hello, St. Louis-style pizza, though putting Provel cheese on a pie should probably be a crime of its own. The baseball culture is strong, and the Arch really is impressive when you see it in person. But day-to-day living, it's a grind. High crime, low economic opportunity, and a city government that always seems to be one step behind make it exhausting for residents. So why is St. Louis at number 3? Because it's not just struggling, and it's famously struggling. People across the country know about the crime rate here. It's the kind of city that makes national worst of lists almost by default. And here's the kicker. St. Louis isn't even the worst city in Missouri. Nope. If you think this is bad, wait until you hear about number 2. This one is smaller, grittier, and somehow manages to have an even worse reputation. Number 2, Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas City. Now, before the barbecue lovers come for me, let's clarify. The food here is legendary. If we were ranking cities on ribs alone, KC would be number 1. No contest. But unfortunately, you can't live off barbecue forever, though some locals seem to be trying. When it comes to actual quality of life, Kansas City has more red flags than a toxic ex. Let's start with crime. Kansas City has one of the highest homicide rates in the country. In 2023, it actually set a grim record with more than 180 homicides, the most in its history. That's not just bad, that's terrifying. Residents talk about shootings like they're weather updates. Hot today, chance of rain, and yep, another homicide. And while crime grabs headlines, the city has plenty of other struggles. Poverty is widespread and income inequality is glaring. Certain neighborhoods are thriving, sure, full of trendy coffee shops and gentrified lofts. But just a few blocks away, you'll find crumbling houses, failing schools, and streets that look like they've been forgotten for decades. The divide is that stark. Then there's infrastructure. Kansas City has a reputation for potholes so massive you could probably lose a small child in one. The public transportation system? Practically non-existent. If you don't have a car here, good luck getting anywhere. And even if you do, you'll spend half your time dodging craters in the road while the other half is spent stuck in traffic. Weather doesn't help either. Summers are blisteringly hot, winters are icy and unpredictable, and spring brings tornado season. Yes, tornadoes. As if residents didn't already have enough to worry about, nature throws in a yearly game of will my roof survive? Now let's talk perception. Kansas City doesn't have the cultural pull of bigger cities like Chicago or New York. Outside of barbecue, jazz history, and the occasional football spotlight, shout out to the Chiefs, it's not exactly seen as a place people dream of moving to. It's more like a place people end up in and then debate how fast they can leave. To be fair, the city does have pride. Chiefs games bring people together, the art scene is surprisingly good, and again, the barbecue deserves a moment of silence. But none of that cancels out the fact that daily life here often feels unsafe, underfunded, and frustrating. So Kansas City lands at number 2 because it combines sky-high crime with poor infrastructure and limited opportunity. It's got flavor, yes, but also danger, decay, and a lot of reasons why residents think about relocating. And if you thought Kansas City was rough, just wait. Because number 1 takes everything we've talked about, crime, poverty, weather, chaos, and says, why not have all of it at once? 1. Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana. If you've ever driven across the Midwest, chances are you've passed through it, and probably rolled your windows up while doing so. Gary is infamous. Not just in Indiana, not just in the Midwest, but nationwide as one of the hardest places to live in America. Let's start with the basics. Gary was once a booming steel town. In the mid-20th century, it was thriving. Jobs were everywhere, families settled down, and the future looked bright. But when the steel industry collapsed, Gary collapsed with it. Factories shut down, unemployment skyrocketed, and people left in droves. The population fell from nearly 200,000 at its peak to under 70,000 today. That's not a decline, that's an evacuation. Now, what's left? Well, not much. Entire neighborhoods are filled with abandoned homes. Schools closed. Businesses shuttered. Some streets look like movie sets for a post-apocalyptic film. And it's not just the look. The numbers are just as grim. Poverty rates in Gary hover around 30%, unemployment is consistently above the national average, and violent crime is rampant. For years, Gary has ranked near the very top for murder rates per capita in the United States. And here's the kicker. Even when crime isn't happening, the fear of it lingers. Residents talk about safety the way people in other cities talk about the weather. Is it safe to go out tonight? Isn't a casual question here, and it's a serious calculation. But it doesn't stop there. Infrastructure is crumbling, public services are stretched thin, and while officials keep talking about revitalization, progress is painfully slow. Tourism? Basically non-existent, unless you count people who drive through Gary just to say they survived it. Now, to be fair, Gary does have a claim to fame. It's the birthplace of Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. Yes, the king of pop grew up here, but ask locals and they'll tell you the only thing that moonwalked out of Gary was opportunity. Living here isn't just tough, it's exhausting. The combination of poverty, crime, and decline weighs heavily on residents. And while there are strong, resilient people in Gary fighting to improve their city, the reality is harsh. It's considered by many to be the single worst place to live in America. So why is Gary at number 1? Because it's the ultimate cautionary tale. A city that went from thriving to crumbling, from hope to hardship. It's not just struggling, it's become a national symbol of urban decline. And that, ladies and gentlemen, completes our list. So there you have it. The 10 worst places to live in America. From Camden's crime rates to Gary's collapse, from Buffalo's blizzards to Miami's hurricanes, it's clear. No matter where you go in the U.S., every city has its own brand of misery. Let's be real, though. These places aren't just bad. They're complicated. Every city we talked about has good people, hidden gems, and moments of pride. Detroit has its music and grit. New Orleans has soul like no other. Buffalo has wings that make you forget your fingers are frozen. Even Gary gave the world Michael Jackson. So no, it's not about saying these cities are hopeless wastelands. It's about showing how tough life can be when crime, poverty, weather, or politics stack the deck against you. What stood out the most? For me, it's how many of these cities were once booming. Detroit, Cleveland, Gary, All industrial powerhouses that went from thriving to barely surviving. It's like the American dream showed up, partied hard for a few decades, and then ghosted them without even leaving a note. That's not just sad, it's a reminder of how fast fortunes can change. Then there's the weather factor. Buffalo buried in snow, Chicago frozen by winds, New Orleans drowned by floods, Miami drowning in sweat. You start to wonder if Mother Nature has a personal vendetta against American cities. If it's not ice, it's heat. If it's not heat, it's tornadoes. Basically, the US. Weather forecast is just pick your poison. And of course, crime was the other big theme. St. Louis, Kansas City, Camden, these aren't just dangerous, they're off the charts dangerous. Living there means constantly looking over your shoulder, locking every door, and maybe considering a career as a security expert just by necessity. But here's the twist. People still live in these places. They raise families, cheer for sports teams, open businesses, and fight to make things better. That's the real story hidden underneath the doom and gloom. Resilience, pride, community. Because no matter how bad the statistics look, people will always fight for their home. So what's the takeaway? Honestly, it depends on how you look at it. You could see this list as a warning. Don't move here unless you like chaos. Or you could see it as a strange kind of inspiration. If people in Gary, Detroit, or Buffalo can survive all that, maybe I can survive my annoying neighbor and high rent. At the end of the day, every city has problems. Some just have more personality. And whether it's corruption, crime, or catastrophic weather, these places remind us that the worst city for some is still home for others. So now it's your turn, and what do you think? Did we roast your city? Did we miss one that absolutely deserves a spot on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Just keep it civil, unless you're from Chicago, in which case feel free to yell at us in all caps. Thanks for sticking around for the ride. And hey, wherever you live, at least it's not Gary.